Woe betide the man who understands the npm run stack. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to focus on the article for a bit. As far as I can tell, there is no computer program that makes it simple and easy to self-host a website for publishing content and hosting discussions. By self-hosting, I don't mean necessarily on your own computer. A server that you rent out from some provider is acceptable too, as long as you can easily move to a different provider without loss. Now, so the article talks about self-hosting, but at the very end, the author here very nicely ties it into what we're talking about. Why this matters. This is important for the freedom of people on the internet. The internet is becoming more and more centralized. You don't own your data. Big tech can shut you down. The answer to this is to host your own website and be in control of the data on it. But with the currently existing tools, it's not easy. Setup is difficult, maintenance is difficult, scaling is difficult. The current systems are all needlessly complex, and they often lack important capabilities. When something is difficult to do, very few people will do it. It doesn't matter if there are systems out there that let you do this if they are too complex and difficult. It doesn't even matter if they are open source. The fact that they are open source contributes almost nothing if they are also complex and near impossible to operate without extensive sysadmin knowledge. In the following section, I will outline what it takes for self-hosting systems to be easy, reliable, capable, and useful. Outline. The system should have two components. A management program that runs on the user's local machine for, well, management and administration. A server program that actually runs the website and serves its content over HTTP/HTTPS. The management program manages the installation of the server program on a remote server, likely Linux, given just the IP and root login password of the server. The installation time is basically just the file upload time. The actual installation is nothing but creating a specific user and home directory for that user and giving the server program the capability to listen on ports 80 and 443. It shouldn't take more than a fraction of a second. Nothing on the server needs to be messed with or configured. No packages need to be installed, ever. The local manager program is an easy-to-use GUI and comes with a dashboard for monitoring the server and changing its settings. There should be nothing to configure. There are only settings that tweak and tune the behavior of the server. The difference between settings and configuration is that if you configure something wrong, the system might break and stop working. With settings, you can't break the server or cause it to stop working by accident. All settings should be optional. The program should still be able to perform basic operations even if some information is not provided. For example, if no domain name is configured, the server can still run and be accessible by IP port combination. The server should manage SSL certificate using services that follow the ACME protocol. It can use Let's Encrypt by default and allow the user to switch to another provider via settings. If the certificate management subsystem fails for any reason, the server should be able to detect that and degrade gracefully to just serving over HTTP. The website should feature dynamic content and interaction with users, for example, at the very bare minimum, posting articles and having comments for discussing these articles with visitors. Much better would include ability to upload media, pictures, video, audio, and providing a full-featured forum and chatting functionality, along with email subscription and a way to sell digital or physical products without the high fees that other platforms charge. Configuration of appearance would be nice to have, but I don't think it's essential. The default appearance should be so good that no one would have a strong objection against it. The system could ship with a few built-in themes for people who like variety, but full-on customization is probably more trouble than it's worth. The local management program should enable the user, the website owner, to own all the data so they can change VPS providers, etc., without losing a single bit of data. For example, it could feature continuous backup to the local file system. It should also make it possible to back up data selectively. For example, backup articles, but not forum posts or chat messages, or maybe provide a date filter, for example, only backup chat messages 10 days or newer, discarding older ones. I botched the reading, but hey, it's on text, you can read. It's on screen. I botched that too, damn it. The client-side manager program should feature a dashboard that displays various analytics such as number of visitors over time, resource usage over time, data usage on disk, emails sent over time and their status, etc. The server should be able to handle reasonably high load on a single machine that is cheap to rent. For example, it should be able to effortlessly handle thousands of concurrent users that are actively using the site and interacting with it on $5 a month hosting. No one should be worried about hug of death when they post links on popular websites. The server should also be able to scale horizontally by adding peer nodes. This would be considered an advanced use case that the vast majority of users wouldn't have to bother with. The way to do it will be via the management program. Adding new nodes is not much different than the initial setup. Just provide the IP and root login. The system will automatically manage all the nodes and make sure they shard the data and split the load in a reasonable manner. The server should be able to send emails without the user having to sign up for a third-party emailing service. In other words, the program can act like a mail server and manage sending emails robustly. Perhaps the user would have to configure some DNS records for this to work, so the program should be able to verify that the DNS records are set correctly, and in the case of a problem, it should inform the user which settings need to be edited, and how in a very clear and easy to understand way. Ideally, it should be able to manage the DNS records on behalf of the user or provide the UI necessary for the user to edit DNS records in a more controlled way that does not lend itself to errors. The program need not be open source. This is a mere distraction. It does not actually matter, despite what many may think. In fact, the program should be sold for money in order to be sustainable. The source code could be provided for additional fees, but the license does not need to abide by the FSF or OSI definition of open source. Namely, the right to redistribute the source code or the program that is built from it is a phony right that actively hinders the effort of making it sustainable for the makers to continue making and improving the program. Now, immediately at the end of this, I was thinking to myself, this kind of a requirement set for a software that's like this is actually feasible in our day and age. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, but we have everything we need. It's at the very least, it's much easier today than it would have been even 5 years ago. And it actually does shock me that we don't even have anything nearly close to this. It's not even close to anything like this. Maybe in certain aspects, there's some things that touch on some of the features that this article has talked about thus far. But this idea that you have localized data, localized websites with all these features, settings versus configuration, smart checks, etc., things like that, we should be able to do this, even though it's not like, well, let's just pop it off in a weekend or anything like that. No, of course not. Current situation. Almost every single tool for running a website or a specific type of web application requires sysadmin level knowledge to successfully get started with installing and running it, and even more knowledge is required to keep it running and recover from problems. At minimum, they often require the installation and configuration of a database server, which is a separate program you install before you can install the website you want to run. It is for this reason, I believe, that static site generators are gaining some popularity. They are easier to manage and they guarantee ownership of data. Since you write everything on your local machine, no one can take anything away from you. The unfortunate thing about static websites is they lack interaction with visitors, which is the whole point of the web. If you want comments, you must use a third-party hosted service, which defeats the whole point of owning your data and keeping the web decentralized. For example, the open source blogging and newsletter platform Ghost requires installing and configuring Nginx, MySQL, and Node.js. WordPress requires PHP, Apache, and MySQL, but the official Ubuntu guide lists 14 packages that need to be installed. This guide includes cryptic configurations and unfamiliar system commands that even I, as a technical person, don't understand. Discourse requires Ruby, Redis, Postgres, Sidekick, and Nginx. They don't actually tell you how to configure these systems. Instead, they rely only on they only officially support installing with Docker. Initial configuration is done via CLI prompts, but later changes require editing text files and running Docker commands. Why the situation persists. Programmers love complexity. In a way, programming is an activity where you wrangle with complexity and beat it down. It feels like an achievement when you take a complex and hard-to-use computer system and still manage to make it do something useful. So you have people who thrive on editing Docker and Nginx and hot proxy config files to make a website work, especially when they lack the skills necessary for low-level programming. It's similar to why people play puzzle games. The complexity of configuring multiple Unix-style programs towards performing a certain task is their puzzle game. For companies, there's no economic incentive to make things easy and simple. If you make it hard to self-install, you can provide a hosted solution and charge users a subscription fee. Subscription fees are recurring, so they are a more attractive business model than one-off sales. This is even more true in the case of open source projects. The most common model of monetizing open source used to be paid support, though it seems the trend is shifting towards providing managed hosting. In either case, if the product is easy to set up and maintain, there would be no reason for the users to pay for support or hosting, since they would be able to host for themselves and would not need support. This mindset is infecting other kinds of applications. There are now people who want to turn what was previously self-sufficient, standalone computer programs that don't really need an internet connection to work, to turn them into web applications and provide them as services, or SaaS, so they can charge recurring subscription fees. There's almost no incentive for anyone to make a thing that is architecturally simple and easy to self-host. A worse problem is that many recent programmers mentally reside very high on the abstraction ladder. They don't understand nor care what the computer is doing. They mostly think in terms of frameworks and libraries and programs and services. This is why most web applications are designed so that different programs handle different parts of the problem and then get glued together by some scripts and configuration files. It's basically Lego blocks on steroids. Programmers these days are getting their rocks off on being able to play with Lego blocks because they haven't grown up. For example, one program acts as an HTTP server, one program acts as a data storage and querying server, one program acts as a message broker, whatever that means, one program acts as a memory cache, and then you have code written in a scripting language that handles responding to incoming requests. Then you write a bunch of configuration files for each of these programs so they can sort of know about each other and communicate with each other. Tell the HTTP server where the scripting files and static files are located in the file system, tell the scripts about the login information for the database server, etc. This is actually a simplified version. In practice, many companies' internal development process is so much more complicated. You can't just write code and then run it to see the effect of your changes. You have to run several programs, sometimes with cryptic or complicated command line arguments, edit some config files, and wait a few minutes for everything to start up before you can even do anything. After you make changes, you might sometimes have to restart several of these programs and wait for some time again before you can see the effect of your changes. It's crazy. The best they can do to simplify the handling of this architectural mess is to containerize it, which is very similar to having a virtual machine with many programs running inside it. It does work to some extent, but you must not underestimate how much developers love complexity. Once programmers get comfortable with containers, they start to design web applications that require multiple containers to be running at the same time. Of course, this requires editing some config files for all the containers to know about each other. They call it microservices. They consider it an advancement in software development. It's insane. Collapsing the layers. While containers may solve some of the problems of complicated infrastructure, they are ultimately just another layer on top of the stack. They suffer the same problem as everything else. They have a tendency to break for stupid reasons, and when they do, the problem is not tractable, at least not without extensive specific knowledge about the particular system being containerized. The proper solution is to collapse all the layers and combine all the different services into the same program. Serving HTTP and managing data storage and querying don't need to be handled by different programs. They can be combined into the same program. This requires a shift in perspective. Instead of using scripting languages, you should use a language that has a compiler that produces executable binary files. Instead of requiring MySQL or PostgreSQL to pre-exist on the system, you can use a library such as SQLite that can be embedded into the final program. When everything is just code and you have a compiler, it becomes trivial to produce a self-contained program that is easy to ship. You get the added benefit of not being run in a slow interpreter that struggles to serve concurrent requests. So you don't need to run 40 instances of the program and load balance them. You just run one instance of the program, and if it encounters higher load, it just uses more system resources to deal with the load. So much complexity can just completely disappear without loss of capability. This is just low-hanging fruit, and it's doable today, right now. With more work and effort, it should be possible to achieve 10x performance on a single machine and enable very easy horizontal scaling without resorting to a cloud service, just a few dedicated machines. So this is a great summary of what happens when you have people who do not either understand or don't care or all of the above about what they're doing in terms of the complexity that they're adding. And instead what they're really doing underneath is they're catering to their emotional faculties. So the ability to change a few config files and then say something worked. And I understand how it worked because I wrote the config. It feels good when you do that. It feels good when you've adjusted the configs. This is just an example of a type of complexity. That's a feel good thing that you do, but you don't actually understand what's going on. You have abstracted away your knowledge to other things that are running, and all you've told it is what you would like it to do. You haven't told it how. You haven't told it why. And you most certainly don't know the answer to those questions anyways, in most cases. And then on top of that, you have other incentives that are tangential. They're like related to that. So for example, the incentive to make things easier for other people. And so somebody will come up with some way that they feel is intelligent to solve a problem. And they solve that problem in their own way. And other people pick up on it and go, well, that feels good. Seems about right. Let me just use that. And that's as an entailment of that feeling good. You pull in someone else's solution, but you also pull in everything that comes with it. I'm going to take a second here. Let me see what's going on. Twitch chat here. First of all, Riz, thank you for the subscription for 8 months. You're crazy. Thank you, Riz. If you're a mom and pop shop, this isn't really feasible. So the idea here would be that if you're a mom and pop shop, if you were actually going to build this thing, you would build it so that it would understand, it would have the mechanisms built in to handle load, for example. So as a mom and pop shop, you would just see, wait, I'm getting a whole bunch of, a whole bunch of load, and maybe the system just automatically understands that it has to do whatever it needs to do, or you could like push a button or, something along those lines. It would make it easy. Then what that would do is that it would actually enable the mom and pop shops to be self-sufficient. And if the mom and pop shop took off and made a bunch of money, and then they started to deal with like real world scaling issues, then you might be able to afford having someone come in and take something that is already built on simple paradigms and expand upon it with a few more simple paradigms that handle your needs. Hey, Nate Core, thank you for the sub, man. Every Uncle Bob produces an Auntie Bob 20 years down the line. Yeah. I don't even think it's a feel-good thing a lot of the time. Every time I fire up a Docker container, I'm filled with revulsion. Maybe for you, but I think for a lot of people, it does actually feel good to spin up a Docker container and have it configured. And the author is right. Even Docker, like look at Kubernetes. Kubernetes is like microservice Docker containers on steroids. And it's just bonkers to me how anybody can look at Kubernetes and go, yeah, this is fine. Chief, have you seen Microsoft Power Automate? Too bad so many enterprise architects say, learn this process so we can all do it. SA, write a console app to run 10x faster. Yeah. Hey, Hassan Judy is actually on YouTube. So here you go. It's a great article. I just wanted to, go over it. Load for most blog-like websites is like 10K concurrent visitors, which is not even 100 requests a second. Really easy to handle, actually. Hi, yeah. No, I agree. It is really easy to handle. And if you look at like well, hang on. Let me just see what Lem responds to about the mom and pop shop thing. They still need to understand what load is. And if they want the system to automatically scale up, it will cost a pretty penny. But you would also need a way to spin up a bunch of machines, which would be much less efficient than the Shopify model. So Lem, based on this article and what Hassan, oh man, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, man. I'm really sorry. But based on like, look, imagine this, Lem. You're a mom and pop shop, and you've got this GUI, and you're selling T-shirts, like you said, right? That was your example. So you're selling T-shirts. Man, it takes off. And the T-shirts say no to complexity, not even once, and it just like, it takes off. And the GUI will say it essentially is a simplified form where you don't need to be a sysadmin. And I believe that it was actually written in the article. You shouldn't have to be a sysadmin to run it. Essentially, it's the opposite of whatever this is, right? You don't have to be a sysadmin. So you can look at it and go, wait, like I'm redlining, like, which is what they call it when the RPMs in your car hit the red portion, right? So your rotations per minute when you're revving up the engine, they redline. And you're like, okay, I'm redlining because I'm getting a bunch of traffic. That's what it means to you because you see it just visually on a chart. What should happen inside of something like this, like what's being described here, is one of two things, or maybe both. One would be, well, I'm so lightweight that I can handle. So what did Hassan say on YouTube? Blog-like websites is like 10,000 concurrent visitors, which is not even 100 requests per second. So there's a very minimal amount of resource usage that can be used on a GUI, like on a application that would be written this way. And so then the application would go, hey, I need to use more resources on what's available. So what you can do is you can have a reasonably priced server that can actually handle way more. And if you want proof that we are vastly underestimating the capability of servers, you can look at something like, Phoenix, Elixir Phoenix WebView. It's Elixir Phoenix, I believe, where they essentially serve HTML over WebSockets. And it is so stinking fast. It is unbelievably fast. It barely does anything with thousands of requests at any given moment. And then you could push a button to say, have it start up another server or point it to another server. You could hire somebody to come in for 3 hours, set you up another server. If you're making that much traffic and you're selling stuff, and hopefully you're selling that much stuff, you can probably afford it. And if you can't, I don't think your only option is resource usage, spin up more servers, etc. Sometimes you can do something like, okay, let's add some like really heavy caching or something like that. Hit a button and go like heavy cache. There are other things you can do which are non-sysadmin level things and don't cost a lot. Okay, Twitch ads. Unfortunately, Twitch ads. Here, I'll put this up. Hopefully I'm doing the article justice, Hassan. If blogs are low-hanging fruit because nobody reads them yet. But there's a fundamental complexity floor. There is so Lem, yeah, since ads are playing, I might as well. There is a fundamental here, let me just make sure I run the full ads here. Okay. Yes, there is a fundamental complexity floor. Like at some point, you're going to hit a level of complexity that a tool like this cannot simply tackle. It's like one does not simply walk into mortar, right? One does not simply handle a certain level of complexity. So I get it. You have to watch the ad. Okay, then I'll pause my response and hey, Ghost Magic, good to see you, man, on Twitch. There's 2.5 minutes of ads. I'm sorry, everyone on YouTube and anywhere else. It's stupid. I wish that I could turn off the Twitch ads, but I cannot turn off the Twitch ads. So we got to let it play out. Otherwise, then everybody who has to watch ads on Twitch doesn't get the content. And I want to make sure it's fair for everyone, but yeah, Hassan, I appreciate the article. It's a banger article. And I just felt it tied very nicely, since Hassan can hear me on YouTube, because all you Twitch losers have to watch ads. We're a bunch of peasants on Twitch, huh? You gotta put your nose up at them. This was a banger article, and I thought it fit nicely into the idea that developer experience is not what it's cracked up to be. And if anything, it's, in my opinion, again, it's quite culty. And I thought this article was just like, it just fits so well. Like I feel good when I do it. It makes me feel good to put the puzzle pieces together. I don't really understand what's going on, so I get that imposter syndrome feeling at the end because my logic clashes with my feelings, because at some point I realize that I don't truly understand. Therefore, am I really a programmer? Therefore, why am I getting? And you know what I think it is? You know what? I think it's worse the more you get paid. Right. So back in when there was a big influx of programmers who were coming into the field, like in the 2020s, 2021, 2022 ish. And you could be a junior and you could make a boatload of money in some cases. And all you had to do was wrangle configs, more or less. And then when it came time to understand what those configs did, you're like, oh, I don't know. Your brain is like, I don't know. Your logic and your feelings don't match. And then you feel imposter syndrome, which is cognitive dissonance, which is the cult shining through. I just genuinely think it's cult behavior. And I've been there. I've been there in the industry where I latched onto something and I went, holy crap, this is so easy. And then I look back on it and I'm like, wait, what the hell was I thinking? That wasn't the right. No, it's bonkers. And I'm thankful for people like Hassan who can see through that, because I think very few people can. Hassan on YouTube says, the more you get paid, the more responsibility you have to not complain about garbage DX. Can you imagine being paid $20,000 a month as a consultant and then complain about Next.js or Docker? Yeah. It's essentially like the feeling that, it would feel like you're shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. Where you're getting paid a lot of money to use these tools and then you go dump on the tools. It's like, I don't know, you're a blacksmith or something, right? And you have got the hammer thing to make swords with, but the hammer sucks. But man, you make a lot of money using that hammer to make swords. And then you go, but this hammer sucks. And it's like, well, if the hammer sucks, why are you using it? And then it's like, it feels like you're about to shoot yourself in the foot. Okay, now to tie this back in, so Lem, as I was saying, that there is a complexity floor to answer your question, yes. But there are ways to circumvent that complexity floor in a piece of software that handles this stuff. Or you can go outside. You can have the software tell you when you've reached that complexity floor, so that the mom and pop shop people who don't understand what that complexity is, I better turn this off. When the mom and pop shop, they don't understand what that complexity is, they can at least be told that they've probably hit it and they can go seek help. And it is a much more focused and educated decision to spend money on a developer or a sysadmin person or anybody who, insert thing here, who can come back or who can come in and help you fix that complexity. And you've started at a lower set of complexity. So just to kind of tie in exactly what we've been talking about. So you get paid a lot of money. Are you really going to trash talk the tools, even if you don't feel like the tools are very good? You're a mom and pop shop. There's a complexity level. How are you it's going to cost you a lot of money, etc. I am not going to go through all the details, because it's free. It's on my YouTube channel, all the live streams. The last four live streams that I've done are on my YouTube. They're free to watch. They will always be free. I have already laid out the case via data, via academic studies and scientific research papers, which we're about to read two right now. Very soon, I mean. And they go into the fact that we're actually bleeding money. The money that tends to come in from fluxed into the IT industry from companies, into companies, into startups, into products. It's one of two. Well, it's really one of three things, but overwhelmingly one of two. So the one thing that you would think would it's got to be user payments, right? Users pay for a product. And generally, sure, yeah, in some cases that's true. But in most cases, that's actually not true. If you've ever worked in a venture capital backed company, what they essentially do is they project current sales into future sales, which may or may not be true. And what will happen is that venture capitals or investors or capitalists or investors or whatever will dump buttloads of money into what they think are projected revenue earnings. So you could be making not as much by comparison in terms of user-generated income, but your venture capitalist income is through the roof. And people equate that to success. And that's not what I think is true success. That venture capitalist income is so that you can see the fulfillment of that projected revenue. That's what the point of venture capitalist income is so that you can hit that projected revenue. In the industry, I've already gone through it. Again, like I said, go back and see the streams where I believe that I've sufficiently proven this to be true. Most companies these days do not make a portion of their income from user-generated income. They make it from venture capitalist income, and they consider that a success. What's more, if you compare that venture capitalist income to the amount of general outflow of money that happens on things like security vulnerabilities, which affect people not just financially, to the tunes of, I kid you not, trillions of dollars. Sometimes in some cases it is greater than some countries' entire GDP or national debts. The amount of money we spend on security vulnerabilities in North America alone is staggering. And where do you think that money comes out from? Where do you think that money comes out from? So if you subtract costs of defects, security vulnerabilities, costs of those things, and that's not to mention the cost of actual human lives and the detriment it has on human wellness impact. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. I have been through the data. I have sat down and read the boring, dry paper studies that have gone into what actually gets spent in the IT industry in mass. Refactorings, technical debt. Do you know that in the US alone, if you paid all the developers in the US, I'm not kidding you, this was true, I believe, in 2022 or in 2023. It is an actual study. Again, it is on my live stream. If you paid if you took the amount of money spent on technical debt spent as recorded in the entirety of the US by programmers who recorded the fact that they spent X amount of time, therefore X amount of dollars on technical debt, you could pay all developers twice. One for technical debt and one for their average salary in the entire United States. Where do you think that money comes from? Because it doesn't come from projected cash flow. Hassan on YouTube says future cash flow like this. Yeah. Something I also noticed, hiring more developers makes it easier to raise more VC. It does. Yeah. So an employee of a VC company, the value you provide to the company is not the work you do. No, it's a warm body and seat, because it's a signal. It's a signal that you have a person. You have people who, the entailment to someone who's looking to invest, the logical entailment would be more warm bodies capable of producing code equals more features being able to be produced equals more users purchasing to have access to those features. And therefore they project revenue from that, and therefore they invest. Hassan, you're absolutely right. It's the appearance of doing important, complicated work. Right.